Imagine you walk into a restaurant, new place, big opening, line out the door, you sit down, you open the menu, and you ask the waiter a totally normal question. Hey, can I get this without onions? And the waiter looks you dead in the eye and goes, we're not an onion removal restaurant. If you want food without onions, there's a McDonald's down the street. And then he just walks away, doesn't take your order, doesn't come back, leaves you sitting there holding a menu in a restaurant that he told you to just leave. That's not a hypothetical. That, with the onions swapped out for sea monsters, is a real thing that a real developer said to real paying customers this week. And the studio it happened at is one I genuinely no bit love. So strap yourself in because we're going underwater for this one. Okay, Subnautica 2 early access just dropped. 5 million people had it wishlisted. It was the single most wishlisted game on all of Steam for like a year. People love this franchise. The first game is one of the best survival games ever made. So expectations, stratospheric. And by most accounts, the game actually launched in a decent state. Reviews are sitting very positive. The ocean's gorgeous, the multiplayer works, the vibe is there. So far, so good. And then players started asking one question, a reasonable question. Hey, when a giant murder whale the size of a school bus is gnawing on my submarine, is there any way for me to, do something about that? Now, longtime fans know Subnautica's whole identity is that you're not a soldier, you're a guy stranded on an alien water planet with a wrench and anxiety. The point is that you're prey. That's the genius of it. But here's the thing, in the first game, you could at least swat a fish with a knife in self-defense. You weren't Rambo, but you weren't completely helpless either. In the sequel, they took that out. So now you've got angry fish parking themselves on your front porch, headbutting your base, and you can do absolutely nothing. You just have to stand there and take it like it's a HOA meeting. So a player asks about it on the official Discord, and a level designer responds, and I want you to really sit with this one, we aren't a killing game. Go play Sons of the Forest or something if you want to kill. Pardon? Go play a different game? You're in an early access Discord. The entire point of early access is please give us feedback so we can make the game better. That's the deal. That's the transaction. And a guy who works on the game looked at a customer asking a normal design question and said, get out, this isn't for you. That's where I lost it. It's like buying a gym membership and the personal trainer telling you that if you wanted to get fit, you should have gone to a different gym. And look, I actually agree with the studio's philosophy here. I think a Subnautica where you blast everything with a harpoon would be a worse game. The vulnerability is the magic, but there's a galaxy of distance between we've chosen a non-violent design and here's why, and lol, go away. One of these is a design vision, the other is a customer service incident. Quick resurface for air. We've been learning about this company that seems to like to drown its customers in the ocean. So let's talk about a company that does the opposite of that in today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by Old Salt Coffee. Coffee made by actual sailors, a crew of Navy vets who spent years underway surviving on the worst coffee known to mankind, came home and then decided to fix it. And the part I respect, every blend funds a different veterans organization. So buying a bag actually does something, which is more than I can say for the EULA we're about to read. Now, they've got a dark roast literally called Silent Service, submarine themed, which for this video would be a little too perfect. So naturally, that's not the one they sent me. What's in my mug right now is one called Green Eyes, also a dark roast, funds the Navy SEAL Foundation, and the name's gonna hit anybody who's ever been up at 2 a.m. staring into a glowing screen because their brain wouldn't clock out. Holy that's good. And here's where it gets worse, because of course it does. While everyone's arguing about fish combat, a second fire starts in the other room. Players start actually reading the end user license agreement, the thing none of us read, the digital, I have read and agreed to the terms lie we all tell, and the fine print is doing some interesting gymnastics. We're talking language about ownership, language about what you can do with content from the game, language touching on privacy, and you can't even boot the thing up until you click agree. So now you've got a game that on one hand says we want a collaborative conversation with our players, and on the other hand makes you sign a contract on the way in the door that quietly hands a bunch of rights over to the suits upstairs. And I want to be careful and fair here. Plenty of people pointed out this kind of clause isn't wildly different from a lot of other Steam games, but everyone else's contract is also kind of gross, is not the flex companies thinks it is. So now let's stack this lasagna. Layer 1, a beloved studio launches a sequel. Layer 2, a dev tells paying customers to play a different game. Layer 3, there's a EULA in there making people nervous about what they're signing. And layer 4, the one that turns this from a normal launch week stumble into something that actually means something, is who is standing behind the curtain. Because here's the part of this story most people commenting on the fish drama have completely forgotten. The studio that made this game, its founders got fired by the publisher. The CEO, the game director, the technical director, gone. Last summer in a legal saga so ugly, a Delaware judge wrote about it like she was narrating a heist movie. There was a $250 million bonus on the table for the team if the game hit its revenue targets. Then the game got delayed, and a whole lot of people did the math and concluded the delay looked an awful lot like a way to run out the clock on that payout. The fired CEO went to court, the judge ordered him reinstated, and then the publisher announced the launch date anyway, a date the reinstated leadership says they didn't even sign off on. The publisher even quietly scrubbed its own name off the Steam page before launch, like a guy taking off his name tag before the cops show up. So when you see this apology letter, and to be clear, the studio did put out a genuinely humble, well-written letter this week saying sorry, owning the bad communication, promising patches, you have to understand the conditions it was written under. This is a development team apologizing to its fans while standing in a building owned by the company that fired their bosses and allegedly tried to vaporize their bonus. That's the incentive structure. The people closest to you, the actual humans making the game, are almost never the villains. They're usually the ones eating the damage on behalf of decisions made 3 floors up by someone who has never once been chased by a Leviathan. Let me step off the gas for a second. Somewhere out there is a person, let's say a guy in his 30s who played the first Subnautica during a really rough stretch of his life. A lot of people did. That game has this reputation as a thing people fired up at 1 a.m. when their brain wouldn't shut off, and somehow drifting through a quiet, glowing, terrifying ocean made the noise stop for a while. That guy waited years for the sequel. He didn't follow the lawsuit. He doesn't know who Crafton is. He doesn't care about earn-out windows. He just remembered how the first one made him feel, and he bought the second one the second it dropped. And the first real interaction he had with the people who made it was being told to go play something else. That's the cost, not the stock price, not the Metacritic number, that guy. The trust that a game built up over a decade, the single most valuable thing a studio can have, and how casually one bad sentence in a Discord can put a crack in it. Subnautica's whole premise was, you are small and the world is big and beautiful and scary and you'll be okay. And for 1 week, the message the community heard instead was, you're not welcome here. That's a tragedy, and the saddest part is the developers themselves almost certainly didn't mean it that way. So okay, sentimental moment over, back up to speed, because there's one more nugget I have to share, and it's the cherry on this whole Sunday. The community didn't just complain, they started making memes, specifically a wave of images casting the first game's silent protagonist as an absolute alpha Chad who feared nothing, versus the sequel's protagonist drawn as a trembling little guy who isn't allowed to defend himself. The fan-based character assassinated their own new hero out of spite. That was the most internet response to a design dispute I've ever seen. And honestly, respect. That's how you protest with art. And here's where I land. The game's good. The studio seems to actually be listening. The letter, the promised patches, the walk back tone, all real. I'd give it a beat, let a couple patches land, and watch whether the actions match the apology. But I'd keep both eyes wide open about the company holding the leash, because that's the part that doesn't fix itself with the flare gun rebalance. So if this video washed up in your recommend feed while you were supposed to be doing literally anything else, do me a favor and smash that like button. It genuinely helps more than you know. Subscribe if you want more of these, and drop me a comment. What's a game you loved that completely fumbled the way it talked to its own players? I want the horror stories, the good ones. Tell me everything, and I'll see you in the next one. Cyler, out.